Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's YouTube episode of Freedom Uncensored. It's a interesting topic this week. I really want to spend time with you guys talking about the dream outcome. I think that a lot of business owners, when they first get into business and they take on team members, their idea is that they're going to get themselves into a position where they're not responsible for all of the things in the business. And they've obviously got a team that is able to help and support the functions of the business so that they don't have to do everything. But the reality is, for a lot of salon and clinic owners, that is actually not what happens. They open up a business, they're very good at what they do. What tends to happen is you bring on team members because there's an overflow in demand, because you are good at what you do and you start to attract more clients. And then very quickly you find yourself in a slippery slope of potentially being responsible for some client service delivery, but then also being responsible for team members, but then also being responsible for operations and customer service and quality of service and all of these things, which gets quite out of hand for a lot of business owners. And this is where it gets really stressful for salon and clinic owners. And I think they end up being quite sort of very much a slave to the business, as opposed to the idea of team members being able to afford them freedoms and flexibility for them to be able to do certain things that wouldn't be able to be done if you were employed by an employer. So I'm going to share with you my exact system that I use to support the salon and clinic owners that I work with into transitioning into roles in their business where they play more of a visionary role. I'm a strong believer that playing a visionary role in your business has an untapped opportunity for wealth, because you start to move away from the trading time for money model, in the sense that when you're servicing clients, you're obviously trading time for money, and there's a ceiling to that. You've only got so much time to have that kind of transactional approach to the way that you make money. However, if you're in business and you're able to build a business that does not rely on you for certain functions, and those functions are revenue producing, then this is where your wealth and your opportunity to grow your business becomes uncapped, because you're available and you have the capacity to grow your business in a way that does not purely rely on your time to collect revenue, as it does when you're servicing clients. So I'm going to walk you through the different areas that I coach people around to help them transition into less service delivery driven type work. The other element to this also is that this is the way that I've always done business. Every business that I have set up, I've sought to make sure that that is not relying on my efforts to grow, expand, be profitable, and that actually I can build a business that is supported by the team environment, to make sure that if for whatever reason in life I'm incapacitated or I just don't feel like doing certain things, there's someone there that can do that for me, and the business doesn't necessarily have to go backwards as a result of that. So let's get into it today, guys. I'm going to be sharing with you, stay to the end, the full system required for you to be able to step off the floor and start accessing uncapped potential in terms of your wealth and your time. So let's get into it. All right. So I want to first start with the barriers that I find are very evident for business owners and their pursuit of a business, I suppose, that makes money, regardless of whether they're working in the business or not, and also allows them to have the freedom and the flexibility, which to a certain degree, this is kind of what we got into business for in the first place, because we thought that having a business wouldn't always require our time and our energy, and that there would be other people that we'd trained and developed in the business to be able to take care of some of the responsibilities on our behalf. And then this frees us up to be able to have control over the hours that we work, pick and choose what tasks we like to complete, be able to balance the time between work and family. And the reality is that a lot of salon and clinic owners do not find themselves in that position when they start to bring on team members. In fact, those freedoms and those opportunities for wealth diminish so much that it almost becomes a head scratching moment for a lot of salon and clinic owners where they're looking around and going, hang on a minute, I've taken all these risks, I've invested all of this money, I've brought on these team members, and I'm actually no better off as a result of that. My freedom is, I've got less freedom than ever because of all of these additional responsibilities that I'm taking off, and I've got no money in the bank. So why am I doing this? So I think the bottlenecks are the following for a lot of salon and clinic owners. When they've made the decision to obviously step off the tools and start to grow the team members that they've got under their guidance, I think fundamentally a lot of those salon and clinic owners don't have I suppose, the marketing skills required to make sure that in a push of a button, if it was called for, that they were able to make sure that they can fill gaps and appointments for new team members coming on board. This is after the successful transition of clients that they're moving over. There are going to be ebbs and flows in client flow that need to be subsidized by marketing skills. And for a lot of business owners that have been stuck in the grind of servicing clients, they jump off the floor, they bring on team members, and then they find there's a gap between the number of clients that they've got and filling the hours that they've put on the team members for, particularly if the retention's not where it needs to be in the early stages. So, all of a sudden they're now required to be marketers, and very good marketers, to be able to make sure that they can constantly provide a flow of clientele required to keep those books filled. For a lot of salon and clinic owners I see stepping out of these roles, then they're required to be marketers, and they actually have no idea what to do, how to create marketing, how to create offers, how to use platforms to their advantage in terms of being able to make sure that they've got a steady flow of clientele that's going to keep their team resourcing sustainable. And don't get me wrong, retention is a big part of that. It's not just about only having marketing skills to make sure that you can keep filling the books. You've also got to be able to retain clients too, to keep the growth of the business going. But like I said, because business owners have been so focused on service delivery and to a certain degree, maybe team member performance, when they've kind of stepped away from potentially the service delivery and they look around and they've got gaps to fill, they haven't necessarily refined those skills, maybe because they haven't had the time, maybe because they haven't needed to, when it's just been you and one other team member, or, but then when you step back and you've got to backfill that income, then it's kind of like, whoa, now I need marketing skills, and I'd never refined those. So that's a big gap for any salon or clinic owner looking to get off the floor, is that you need to make sure that you have very well-rounded skills, particularly in areas of marketing, to make sure that if you need to turn on the tap and you need to backfill resourcing, you need to you've got new team members there that you've invested in that for whatever reason, they're taking time to obviously grow and develop their own clientele. You need to have the skill set required to be able to, turn on marketing that can fill up that resource. So that's the first barrier that I find faces salon and clinic owners when they step off the tools and they need to build a sustainable revenue growth and profitability. They often don't know how to turn on the tap and keep the books filled, and that is where things go a little bit haywire for them. The second barrier that I find for a lot of salon and clinic owners is that they think they've got the systems and the operations to support a team, but then when they start to take time away from the business, they find that they actually don't. That people don't tend to follow processes. They, even though they're trained, that training falls away after a period of time, and there's a lot of frustration on the business owner's part. They're kind of going, well, I did train the team. I don't understand why they're not following these processes, or, there's not an understanding that they need to maintain these systems for a reason. And there's a lot of frustration around that for business owners. And often the best way to test an operating procedure is to actually step away from the business and see what happens when you're not there, because the strength of your operating procedures really are tested when you leave team members to their own devices. It's going to show how influential the operating procedures are when you step away and you're not oversighting and checking and things like that, whether the railroad or the scaffolding that you've provided is actually going to hold and support the team. So my belief is that it's one thing to have operating procedures, but it's another thing to have auditing and accountability structures that can support those operations. So I find that often, there might be a scaffolding, there might be a process, but very rarely are the team adhering and following that process to make sure that everything runs well. The third barrier, I think, for business owners contemplating stepping off the floor and being able to execute on that process is that obviously the revenue, if you're a business owner who is largely responsible for a large proportion of your revenue, you might have team members, but take you out of the mix and maybe hand those clientele on to team members. And I'll talk about quality of service in a minute and their ability to be able to successfully support that transition. But when you've been wholly and solely responsible for a proportion of your revenue, for you to step back from that and have team members produce revenue to that standard, or two, just completely understand that stepping back might mean that you're going to lose some of that revenue. For a lot of salon and clinic owners, the reality is they can't afford to do that. So they get stuck in a cycle where, well, I can't step back because I can't really afford to lose this revenue, or I can't step back because passing that revenue on will mean that for a period of time, I've got team members that may not be able to perform at my level, and I can't afford the revenue drop on that. So they're stuck in this vicious cycle of, I'm carrying a lot of the revenue, but I can't actually afford to step back from that revenue. So then I'm kind of stuck, so having a business that relies on you wholly and solely financially to produce X amount of dollars is definitely a bottleneck to you being able to step away. And I'll talk to you about, obviously, the strategies and the structures that you need to have in place to make your transition away from holding the burden of financial responsibility for your business, so that it can be a reality for you to step away and not have the whole thing fall out from under you. There's also, obviously, that I would call business traumas, in the sense that I've often seen business owners step away from client service delivery and not have a very good time, and then obviously through those difficulties decide to go back in and do the treatments, because it may be that they've stepped away prematurely. The team members don't have the skill sets to provide the quality of the service. The clients start complaining and getting annoyed. The service delivery level starts to drop. The cash flow starts to drop, and you don't have enough buffer in the bank account to survive that kind of backward step for a couple of months. So it makes sense to a business owner to throw their hands up in the area and just go back on the floor. It's easier. It's more guaranteed to obviously get a quicker result when you're relying on yourself. But again, that mentality keeps the cycle going. So the other thing is, they might survive for a period of time with stepping away from the tools and not servicing the clients, but then due to a change in circumstances, being a team member leaves or goes on sick leave, or there's holidays, or something happens and there's not enough resource buffer in there, and the business owner is consistently, I call, being sucked into the vortex of the direct service delivery, because there's not enough buffer there to protect them from client service delivery. When you start to lose team members to whatever the circumstances are, the provocation is that you need to go back in there and you need to provide the service, whether it be for a period of time. And then you just find that you just don't find a way back out of it again. Particularly if you're losing team members and you don't have enough buffer there, the easy solution can be sometimes to just get back in there and do the work. You don't want to disappoint people. You don't want to let clients down. You don't want to lose clients. So the risk is that you either go back in and do the work, or you don't, and then you suffer some of those consequences. So I definitely understand that it can be very tempting for a business owner when circumstances play out, like you're losing team members, that the vortex sucks you back into the service delivery and you get stuck there. And then there's the whole mindset element of being able to transition out into a new identity. I think that we work in a technically driven industry, whether it be hair, skin, beauty. A lot of business owners are not like me. When I opened my skin clinic, I was a non-technician. I know there are non-technicians out there, but predominantly the industry of business owners are business owners that have done the work themselves, and it's their trade. So being able to step back from that trade and take on a new role and identity in the business is actually quite scary for a lot of people. For salon and clinic owners, they don't really know what a lifestyle looks like without treating clients. They don't really know who they are if they're not directly involved in client service delivery at a really high level. So there's some psychological transitions that need to be made in identity for you to really being able to step into a new version of you that is not always servicing clients, that is actually about someone who is really stepping into the realm of business ownership and entrepreneurialism. And that can be scary for a lot of people. Scary for a couple of reasons. One is because they're not familiar with it. They don't know kind of what that looks like. I've had clinic owners that just don't even know what to do when they're not busy being busy. When you step into a visionary role in the business that doesn't require you to wear all of the hats, and you've got people doing things for you and they're doing it well, sometimes there's a bit of an existential crisis attached to that, where you go, well, what purpose do I have now if I'm not burnt out, overwhelmed, overrun with tasks and responsibilities? Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? And I've supported a lot, and even myself, guilt creeps in that if you're not overwhelmed with things to do and you're not busy being busy, then what are you doing? So there's definitely some identity work that needs to come along with that new shift in responsibility. We all want the freedoms. We all imagine the freedoms to be this, imagine if I could, go on 6-week holidays and nobody called me, or imagine if, I didn't have to start work till 10 o'clock and I could go to the gym and go for a swim and take the kids to school and have a leisurely old morning before I start work. We all want the freedoms. But then when we get the freedoms, sometimes it's like, oh, this doesn't feel really comfortable to be doing this, and you're dealing with other kind of shifts in identity and emotions that come up as a result of you stepping back from that busyness. There's also a fear of letting go, allowing people to take the reins on something that you've built, or to take responsibility for certain tasks that you've been executing at a standard, requires you to have a level of kind of stability around that. We're often business owners because there's a what's the word for it? A streak of control freakness in us. We like to control things. That's why, we like to get into business to be able to, obviously be the makers of our own destiny. But at the same time, when we're so used to that level of control, passing on that control to other people can be a very overwhelming experience. And then, of course, there's the old ego. That mentality of, again, the reason why we're in business is because we probably have really high standards. We probably execute things to a really high level. We've been successful because of the quality of our work that we've been able to produce. And then when we entrust that quality and that standard to other people, there is sometimes a part of us that is doubtful that people are able to, rise to that level and to that standard, and sometimes that plays out in ways where we're like, oh, I better just do that because I can't trust that somebody's going to be able to do X, Y, Z to that level, or, a mistake's been made and then you're provoked into just sort of intervening or doing it yourself because you can't reconcile the emotional, the guilt, the frustration, the anger, the anxiety attached to somebody actually doing something that's not exactly the same way that you would do it. So managing ego is also an emotional element of you being able to let go of the reins a little bit and allow other people to play a role in the business so that you can actually relinquish control and step away and have things happen in your absence. So there's lots of barriers to overcome. There really is. I often talk about, the fact that as business owners, we have the audacity to think that we could run businesses that don't necessarily require all of our time, attention, effort, energy, and that we could actually have people do things on our behalf and still make unbelievable money, have us live an amazing life, be wealthy, content, all of these dream outcomes. There's a level of audacity in that, right? Because sometimes the general way of doing business is that if you're not working your guts out and you're not, you're not stressed out of your mind and you're not working 60 to 70-hour weeks, then are you really a business owner? And that has definitely been, my early stages of business were definitely driven by that mentality. If I wasn't running myself into the ground, was I really doing what I needed to do to be successful? And what I can say to you is that, now knowing what I know about business life and the opportunities that business can give you to absolutely live a freedom lifestyle, you can let go of some of those pre-existing understandings of success. Particularly even if you've been raised in families where you had parents that were really hardworking and you looked at them running themselves into the ground and just making enough money to get by, but just putting in all of the work and the effort and, 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks, it's been kind of ingrained in you that if you're not working to that level, then potentially you're not going to be successful. And it's definitely, I would say that in my time where I thought that that was the truth, I experience a degree of success, but I can also say to you that the degree of success that I experience now is because I now adopt the opposite approach. The less I'm doing in terms of workload, the more creative I am, the more innovative I am, the more space I have to nurture my business in a way that's going to make it grow. So working and grinding and being in overwhelm and being busy actually only gets you so far. The next stage, an opportunity in business, is actually when you've got the freedom, when you've got the space, when you've got the ability to create without being stressed and overloaded. That's actually where the real money gets made, in my opinion. So, how do I sort of get to sit here and talk to you about these things? I think first and foremost, naively or maybe very optimistically, I don't know where this came about, but I got into business and my belief has always been that you need to get businesses to run without you. That businesses should be a vehicle for freedom, that businesses should be able to deliver you exponential wealth, uncapped earning potential. Like I don't know where I got these beliefs from, but when I first started business, I actually believed that that was kind of the outcome. I very quickly realized that when I got into the grind of my own skin clinic, I actually had 3 businesses running at one time. I had a skin clinic, I had a wellness center that had a yoga studio in it, I had consulting suites. I very quickly realized that those freedoms were not easily earned. That having a business that runs without you is kind of like the unicorn level of business. And again, the audacity to think that you could actually have a business that runs without you, that can deliver you all of these freedoms and all of this wealth. Definitely my first couple of years of business did not for those expectations, and I was kind of crushed. I thought, oh shit, I actually thought that when I swung open the doors and I had all of these people working for me, that I would have cash in the bank and I would be able to sip lattes till midday. And isn't business life great? So it was actually the opposite in the first couple of years of business, but I never let go of that mission and that purpose that I knew deep down, intuitively, that business, I'd seen it play out for lots of successful people. Heard people talk about, being able to have businesses that run profitably, without you needing to wear all of the hats in the business and do 60 to 70-hour weeks. So I just kept working away at it. My idea of starting up a skin clinic with no trade experience, no understanding technically of how that world worked, no ability to actually do the services myself, fundamentally is linked back to the belief that you can run any business. You don't necessarily have to have technical experience, but you obviously need to be able to grow to understand, become theoretically competent, and follow obviously the system that I'm going to show you in the moment. And then that's obviously transferable across lots of different industries and businesses. And, the idea that you can have a business that runs without you is doable when you've got these structures in place, regardless of what industry you're in. So I have successfully, since leaving my qualified profession of being a psychologist, well, actually, probably haven't even left that profession, but I got out of the prison system of which I was working in and went into business. And every business that I have set up, and there's been three, probably six in total, to be honest, if I'm to be honest, and I break down the wellness business into the yoga studio, the allied health, the skin clinic, online marketing, digital agency, coaching business. So working online, working on commercial shopfront. Every single business that I have set up, I've been able to successfully extract myself from the coal operations, everyone. Some of those businesses have scaled to 7 figures. Some have been definitely on their way there. So, now my view is that absolutely you can build businesses to be able to operate in this way. It's not the easiest pathway. It's definitely easier to just be in a business and do all the work and not rely on people. 100%. When I only had to rely on myself when I was a contractor, psychologist, and all I had to do was the assessments, write my own reports, and bill for my hours, it was a very simplistic life. I didn't have to rely on anybody else. My own work was good quality, but I didn't like the fact that if I was unable to work, I didn't have an income. That to me was very, very scary, and in fact, I was lucky enough to have that thought process to actually get into business, fortunately or unfortunately, just before COVID. Because had I have not started to open business, even though business was very difficult during COVID, I'd established alternate revenue streams. And the reality was that if I had relied on my prison job during COVID, I would have been out of work for a long period of time because they shut down psychology in prisons, scary or not. They weren't providing services for a very long time. So I would have been at least 7 or 8 months out of work in prisons, which was my primary income, had I have not decided to actually go into business and be able to produce revenue regardless of whether I was working or not. So here's what needs to happen. For you to be able to successfully transition off the tools, there's a number of different areas that you need to tweak and refine in the way that you do business. And this is the system that I take my Freedom Mastery clients through. We work on all of these different areas because basically people come to me are also of the opinion that they want businesses that run profitably and successfully without them having to service all the clients. That's why we're called Freedom Mastery, right? So first and foremost, I believe everything starts with mindset. Everything, all of your success and your performance and your ability to get a business over the line that doesn't require your efforts and solely to produce revenue, the first point of that really is about your psychology. So, as I mentioned before, some of the mindset barriers attached with being able to transition from being in direct service delivery to playing more of a support role is that fear is part of it, and you're going to have to be able to overcome lots of fear triggering moments in that process. Fear of failure, fear of letting go, fear of passing on responsibility to other people in your business, fear of, for a period of time, maybe a drop in quality of service, or, there's lots of anxieties attached to you being able to step away, from that direct service delivery role. Fear of who you become, when you're so used to servicing clients and not knowing who you are outside of that job role, that's scary. So being able to tolerate levels of fear and emotionally regulate that is really important. Being able to sit with yourself in those moments, learn the distress tolerance skills required to weather those emotionally intensive moments when things might not be working out, or there's some consequences that are arising as a result of you taking a step back, is really incredibly important. I think that being able to make peace with your ego and be mindful of your ego interfering, when you step away from uh, a role, and obviously that being direct service related, no one's ever going to do the job that like you, but that's okay. Your efforts and your attention is going into making other people great. And even though nobody will be like you, definitely other people can be just as good in their own unique way. Okay, so letting go of that, but it's got to be all the way that I want it done, and exactly the same as I would do it. The reality is the world just doesn't work like that. You might have a unique way of doing things that have worked for you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that someone else's unique way of doing things is not going to resonate or have an impact in a different way, but be of the same caliber, you know? So putting your ego aside, accepting that people may not do things exactly the same as you, but could be just as valuable and impactful, being able to let go of control. I understand that we get into business to be in control, to control our own income, to control our level of impact that we're having, to be the masters of our own destiny. But, being in control to the point where you don't allow people to learn, grow, take responsibility, step into newfound skill sets. And that's just holding everybody back. And I just think if you're going to have team, you're going to invest in team, you need to be invested in growth, which means that you need to be able to relinquish control. And you also need to be prepared from a mindset perspective to understand that you are treading the path of most resistance. You are choosing the hardest business pathway, and that is having a business that runs without you. Like I said, it's so much easier to just do things yourself. It really is. So when you choose the path of most resistance, because that's what you're doing when you want to start to build a business that, is where the revenue is not relying on you, where the work is not wholly and solely relying on you, you're choosing a pathway that most people feel is too difficult. So building a tolerance to that, accepting that you've chosen that pathway and being able to rise to the occasion, accept the higher levels of responsibilities, the standards and the bars that you're going to have to raise for yourself, the accepting that things will go wrong, and that, you effectively just become a chief problem solving officer full time, and not being resentful of that is a place that you need to get to be successful at this. The psychology that you have when you get into business and you trade time for money is not the same psychology that you need to be able to build a business that runs without you. That requires a completely different identity, and you need to be prepared to do the self-development work to step into the person that you need to be successful at the components of having a business that runs without you. So that's the mindset part. And then obviously operations is an important part of any business that has people in it. There needs to be a guideline, a roadmap, a railway that people can anchor themselves into to be able to make sure that there's consistency of service, results, quality of service, all of those things. There's a consistency around that, and that is basically delivered by the strength of your operating procedures. And I think that, like I mentioned before, there's one part of having operating procedures, but the next stage of having operating procedures really is about having people that are compliant and consistent in the way that they're adhering to those operating procedures, and that you actually have the checks and the balances in place in your business, being auditing and accountability, to make sure that all of those operations are being adhered to. So just having an operating procedure, in my opinion, is not enough. You need to be able to circle back consistently and have systems and frameworks in place that tells you that there's compliance to those systems, right? And I think that a lot of salon and clinic owners fall over because they think that their operating procedures are enough, but then they go and take a holiday and they very quickly find that the operating procedures are not enough to be able to support, the scaffolding and the guidelines and the way that everybody needs to operate. So level one is, do you have operating procedures? But level two of being able to step out of the business is, do you have your auditing and accountability structures in place to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing in your absence, and you have a methodology of being able to check that, right? Stepping out of your business is not about disappearing. It's not about, you not having a role in your business anymore. It's just about changing the way that the relationship that you have with your business. And when you move from a transition of being technically involved to then being more of a visionary in your business, there are different levels of responsibility that you're going to have in that transition. You're not going to be responsible for the doing or the execution of the operations, but you are going to be responsible for the oversight of the operations. So having those checks and balances in place where you can oversight and make sure that everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing is a safe and efficient way of making sure that the business doesn't fall down when you're not there. The next system, I suppose, that needs to be in place is, obviously, I mentioned this before, is skills of marketing. And this is a very, like I said, I feel like business owners really detach from the skills of marketing over time, because they start a business, they do a good job, they naturally attract clientele, they have an overflow of demand, they start to put some team members on. That's the natural progression. But when, again, a business owner has the audacity to step away from the client service delivery, they need to have the skill set of being able to generate clients on demand to be able to weather the peaks and troughs of the service delivery. When you step away, you need to have the capacity to be able to fill up team members to the level that's going to supplement your income. If you have fluctuations in performance, let's say you have new team members on that may not be retaining at the level that you would like, and it's going to take a couple of months to get them to that standard, you need to be able to have a vehicle that is consistently creating new client acquisition to be able to weather that period of time where they're not probably retaining to the level that they need to. But I just find that business owners are completely underprepared for the marketing skill set that's required to make sure that they can survive and produce clientele to the level that they need to when they're stepping away from their kind of direct service delivery income, and they're replicating that income in other team members. You must be able to push a button and produce new clients on demand. You have to be able to do that to survive. I suppose with any transition away from customer service, it requires you to be able to have a quality of service that is transferable. Right? And what I mean by that is that you might do a bang up job. You might be amazing at what you do. But if you can't transfer that skill set onto other people in your team, then you are not going to be able to step away from client service delivery. And here's where I see people or salon and clinic owners get this wrong. They do an amazing job. A lot of them have been working away in the treatment or the service delivery, and then there's been a neglect to a certain degree of the quality of service of the team members, because let's face it, they're weighing up, oh, should I take on that client or should I spend a couple of hours with my team members? I really need the money. Let me spend my time on service delivery. And it's not saying that they don't completely neglect the needs of the team members, but they don't spend enough time on the team members to get them to the standard that when they step away, they can easily pass clients on and have a standard kind of protected, that the quality of the customer service is at a level where the client realizes that they don't have exactly the same person, but there is a level of service that is evident no matter who they see in the business. And I just think that that gets eroded when a business owner has had to use up a lot of their time to service clients, and they haven't necessarily had the time to lift the quality of the service that has been evident for their team members because they haven't had the time to put in the effort around the training. So it's a bit of a catch-22 because to be able to successfully transition out of your service delivery role, you have to be able to guarantee quality service amongst your team members, right? And that may mean for a period of time, you are really working at just as hard on your team members as you are on your client service delivery, because you're not going to be able to hand your clients on if you hand them on and they notice that there is a drop in quality of service that is notable. And I'm not talking about personality differences here, because they're not going to get exactly the same service with their team member as they're going to get with you, but they are going to notice a considerable drop in quality, right? And you need to make sure that there is not a drop in quality when it comes to handing clients across to other team members. So there needs to be a standard. Obviously, in that transition, there needs to be a transparency. There needs to be a level of respect and care in the transition of clients. I find that often business owners are just too scared about the reactions of clients to hand them on. But I want you to unpack that fear. Are you too scared because you know the quality of service is not there? That you're not handing them over to somebody that is going to be able to maintain that level? Right, because if that's the case, then your fear is warranted. So work on the quality. But if you have put the work in on the quality and you're just scared of the client reactions, that's the work that you need to do on you, right? Because at the end of the day, the clients are not living your retirement. Like the clients don't care that, if you've been stuck in the service grind for all of these years, that you go to retire and sell your business and you've got not a lot to sell because the business has completely relied on you. Right? So, or that you don't have the option of creating a passive income and going into retirement, but still having the business run without you and creating an income for you. Clients don't care about any of that. So, if you're prepared to be stuck in the service grind because you're fearful of the judgment of your clients and the reactions of your clients, they ain't living your life. And they're not going to live the consequences of that down the track when you need more freedoms and flexibility in your lifestyle. Even if you're not at retirement end, you want to have children or you want to, do other things that means that you can't be in your business as much. Clients are always going to look out for themselves. So being able to build the level of confidence and conviction in your own dreams and desires and being able to stand by that, regardless of what opinions the clients have, is really key to you being able to successfully hand those clients on. And I will say that if you are handing clients on with conviction to a good level of customer service, then, it's really about you just having the self-trust to be able to support that process and be connected to your mission first and foremost, right? Because it might have started off you trading time for money, but and then as your aspirations have grown, your lifestyle goals have grown, you've come to understand that business doesn't have to be that way, and you've had the audacity to build a business that runs without you. You have to be confident enough to stand by that decision when shit starts to hit the fan and the clients start acting out a little bit. And I will say that if you've got that relationship with them, they are going to trust you. They are going to be more likely to take a risk with one of your team members than go down the road and hedge your bet on Sally's Salon down the road. But if you violate that trust and you pass them on to somebody that is not able to uphold that standard of service, then the risk is that you do lose that client. The last area that I want to talk about in terms of the system that's required to support your pathway into less client service delivery or none at all, for you to be able to step into more of a visionary role in your business. And I think it's probably one of the most important areas, and it's a bit of a no-brainer, but it's about your leadership. Your ability to influence other people, other team members, is pivotal to you being able to build a business that doesn't rely on you servicing the clients. You might have been used to, leadership styles where you think that telling everybody what to do is going to be the best and most efficient way to secure results and consistency of quality of service and all of those things. But part of that needs to change if you're to step away from the business. If you're not going to be there all the time, which means that you're not going to be able to tell people to do all the time, to tell people what to do, that means that that style of leadership is dangerous, a transactional style of leadership. So being able to step into a transformational style of leadership is scary, but it's key. So transformational style of leadership is facilitating free thinkers, people that make decisions for themselves, people that are prepared to take the reins, people that are okay with making mistakes and getting up and dusting themselves off and having another go. Leadership that facilitates outcomes. So the direction that you're providing to the team members is not what to do. The direction you're providing is the outcome that you'd like to see, and you let them figure out the bits of how to get there, right? So, but that is a skill set. You need to learn how to lead like that. That doesn't just drop out the sky. Being transformational over transactional takes time to develop. You need to have really good communication skills. You need to, have a willingness to tolerate high levels of emotional discomfort. It's a bit like parenting, like when you allow your adolescents to leave the house for the first time and make decisions for themselves and catch the bus or, get public transport or go to the shops on their own. You internally just go, shit, I hope I've done enough for this kid to actually be able to make it home, to make the right decisions, to say no to the right things, to be able to protect themselves if they need to. Same with the team members, so you're not going to be there all of the time. So developing a leadership style that enables people to think for themselves, have some autonomy, make mistakes, recover from that, stay committed, be motivated, even when you're not there, tapping them on the shoulder. That is a style of leadership that needs refinement for you to be successful in stepping away from the tools. A lot of that relies on really good role modeling. So, team members having an aspiration, they've got a leader that not only talks the talk, but walks the talk. So a really good example of that is that, if you want team members to be productive, you've got to be productive. If you want team members to hold a standard around quality of customer service, you need to be holding that standard. You can't be cutting corners. You can't be showing up late. You can't be making excuses. You can't be not showing up as the best version of yourself. So it all trickles down from you. And if you're not showing up in those ways, how can you expect other people to? So the mirror that you are putting out there in terms of your capacity, your skill set, your standard, your ability to raise the bar, you can't have expectations of others if you're not willing to step into that level of responsibility, ownership, skill yourself, right? That's very, very important. As far as leadership goes, obviously there's some transition in what you spend your time on. There's a transition in you would be maybe spending your time before you've decided to step into a less client service delivery role. You might be used to engaging in tasks and activity that are very task driven, answering phones, confirming appointments, running your front of house, paying the bills, reconciling Xero, doing payroll. They're very transactional related tasks. But to be able to grow a business that is profitable and runs without you, you need to shift your attention and your focus from the task-driven activity or the low-value activity to things that are actually going to move the needle, activities that are going to generate wealth, that are going to grow the business. So your tasks and your activities start to become focused on strategies of growth, whether that be, strategic planning, whether it be the performance element of your team members, training, mentoring, guiding team members, auditing and accountability, quality assurance, stuff that grows the business, marketing strategy, marketing plans, all of that stuff is high value activity. So the tasks that you're used to doing when you are in the coalface of the business are not necessarily the tasks that you're going to be focusing on when you actually want to start to leverage your time and grow the business without you being there. The tasks just become different. Everything else that I suppose what you want to primarily focus on is you want to shift from the technical kind of operations driven person ticking all the boxes to the person that is wholly and solely focused on the growth, the development, the needle moving activity and the leverage time and wealth that can be created from the activities that you're focusing on your time, focusing your efforts and your time on. And that's not reconciling zero and doing shit that other people can be doing, right? My view is you only want to do the things that nobody else can do. Honestly, nobody else can do. So good, where there's creativity involved, where there's visionary thought, leadership required. No one else can think like you. No one else can create like you. So they're the tasks that you need to be spending your effort, your attention on. So here's the thing, right? Like, I talk about having the audacity to believe that you can build a business that runs without you, that can create exponential wealth and opportunity and freedoms that you never knew existed. Right? And I believe that if you're going to take the risk and do all of the work and put the effort and overcome all of the turmoil, why wouldn't you do business in that way? We take too many risks and sacrifices to not build a business that runs without us, where we're, being able to experience the fruits of our labor, that trading time for money mentality as a business operator is all good and well. If I don't have anything against sole operators that are happy to just grind on clients for the rest of their lives, that might be less stressful, less overwhelming. And kudos to you. I was one of those people. I just did private work for myself for a very long time. But what I come to realize was that I worked too hard to have to grind all of those days a week, to have to only earn as much money as I was willing to put kind of could only earn as much money as the client that I could see. And life was just bigger and better than that for me. And you can definitely have that too. And I just believe we make too many sacrifices to not work a business to the level where we can then access the fruits and rewards of having some freedom, wealth, and live the life on our terms. I believe that's what business is for. So I'd love to know your insights on this. Are you grinding? Are you feeling like, you're a bit stuck in the hamster wheel of not being able to get out? I'd love to hear your comments on the chat here underneath the YouTube link, but also there's a free training on there too, where I talk about my model much more specifically than the overview that I've provided you guys on today around the system that's required for you to step out of the business. But there is actually a protocol that directly helps people be able to successfully transition over a 16-week period of time. So please check that out. There's some training there for you to have a look at. And I'm a walking, talking testament to the fact that if you really want this, you can have it. But there's obviously a pathway that you need to take, some hurdles that you need to overcome, skills that you need to refine, some identity shifting that needs to happen for you to be successful with that.